Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1981 horror classic, The Evil Dead. Now, this is one of those movies that I've only seen a handful of times, but each time that I see it, I come away impressed with it, especially for its ingenuity, for its originality, for its creativity, and also for how much it was able to do with such a low budget. This film is a testament to sticking through the thick and thin and really getting the most out of not very much. And I think it's really a film that a lot of filmmakers can look at and can aspire to when it comes to creating a film of their own with a similar low budget. That you can do things that are really special, that don't look like it's just shot on shitty and cheap, handycam bullshit with a low budget. So the film is directed by Sam Raimi, and this is his directorial debut. He did some short films before this, but this was the first feature film that he directed, and it is such a amazing debut for a director. Like, you could tell right from the get-go that this was a man with a very special talent behind the camera. He broke entirely new ground when it comes to techniques for filmmaking in this movie, and in the horror genre in terms of how a lot of sequences were shot and how they were handled. His use of angles is impeccable. His ability to really use a makeshift dolly, which is really what they did. They didn't have enough money to actually afford a dolly, so they just created one themselves. In fact, there are some shots where I think they strapped the camera onto a car, just to get the right shot. And the tracking camera movements, the zooms, the pans, so much about this film is just a tour de force when it comes to the direction from a first-time filmmaker. And it still is some of Sam's finest work, especially when it comes to really working around limitations and really creating something that has this very different tone and vibe and overall feel to it because of the direction. This is where Sam really established that he was the master of chaos in terms of chaotic direction that's crazy and it's all over the place and it's got all these different angles and it's just absolutely animal-like in its nature. Like a rabid dog, just running at the camera and running around and attacking the actors and attacking the audience, and it's really is something that has stood the test of time, and not only that, has clearly inspired a lot of other filmmakers in terms of their style and how they approach films like this with similarly intense subject matter. Sam also did a really good job making this film and making the set feel like it's not the hell that it really was making this movie. I mean, a lot of these actors, a lot of these people involved with this movie were stuck in a lot of ways, kind of trapped in this dilapidated cabin in the middle of fucking nowhere in like Michigan somewhere in the freezing cold, and it was a really hellish experience for a lot of people involved in terms of the physicality of it, in terms of dealing with nature and all of these things. But Sam did a good job still grounding people and still keeping people together, and really wanting to finish this film and giving their all to it, despite all of the things that were going wrong behind the scenes. Sam also wrote the screenplay, and the screenplay is very simple, but it's very effective. You have this group of characters Ashley, who is played by Bruce Campbell, uh, his character in this is very different to the portrayal of Ash for the rest of the franchise. And in a lot of ways, it makes Evil Dead, when you revisit it, a little more refreshing, a little more interesting than some of the later incarnations of the character in the franchise. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just there's more depth to Ash here. He's vulnerable. He's not a stock standard action hero, badass with one-liners who shows no weakness and is, a complete ladies' man and so on and so forth like that. He's very awkward around girls. It's really an interesting take on the character, especially if you have never seen the first film and you're just your first exposure or your only exposure to Evil Dead is Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. And that's kind of how it was for me, because I was first exposed to Evil Dead through Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2. I didn't watch Evil Dead until many, many years later. So when I first saw this film, this portrayal of Ash really stood out to me, and in a good way. I thought Bruce Campbell did a really nice job playing this particular version of Ash. This really uncomfortable, shy Ash who doesn't know all the answers and doesn't even necessarily want to get involved when it comes to violence or hurting anybody or anything. He's very reluctant in that regard, which really makes you feel for him so much more when he's put through the hell that his character is placed into when it comes to this movie and its plot. So, this night of horror that he's dealing with, it makes it even more compelling because you just ultimately really feel for this guy and you want him to make it out of there alive. So you have Ash, you have Cheryl, you have Scott, you have Linda, and you have Shelley. And so you have this cast of characters, and they go to this cabin in the woods. I guess that's their plan. They're going to have a vacation together in this isolated rural cabin so they can, spend some quality time with one another. And I guarantee after this movie, there was a lot of people who canceled their cabin vacation plans. They were like, nah, we don't need to be having a vacation in a cabin in the middle of the woods. We don't need to do that. I don't want to find a tape recorder and then, press play and then demons from hell come out of the trees and possess my friends and me and I have to deal with the Evil Dead. No, thank you. But anyway, it's a very simple plot. These characters, they go to the cabin in the woods for some R&R, and shit goes to hell, literally. One of the characters, I think in this film, it is, it's Scott. He presses play on a mysterious tape recorder, which is the kind of thing that's a normal thing. You could see people doing that in this kind of situation, like curiosity getting the better of them, and they're bored. Like, what else is there to do? There's no TV, there's no anything like that, so it's like, all right, let's listen to this tape recorder. And the tape recorder plays a message, an incantation that brings these demons from the bowels of hell, and they start possessing people. And things turn very dire and get really bloody and get really crazy. And Ash is eventually the only one left alive, and he has to find a way to survive the Evil Dead. And unlike the other films in the franchise, the screenplay is much more orientated in straight up horror. There might be a few moments of humor and levity, but for the most part, it's a straight up horror movie. And it is still really genuinely scary. And a lot of that has to do with its intensity. and its power. You know, and a lot of you know, you have not only do you have the camera work that is very powerful, but you also have, you know, the look of the possessed characters. You know, when they turn around and they just look very inhuman, and it's a really original design for the makeup that you really had not seen before. And I like the stop motion that's used in this film. I think it works to the film's benefit. I never thought it was funny. I know some people look at it as being like so bad it's good and like cheesy, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as really impressive, especially considering how little uh, the cast and the crew had to work with in terms of a budget, in terms of pretty much anything when it comes to this movie. Um, and yeah, I think the characters are strong enough. There's not a lot of dialogue in this, and I think that actually works to the film's benefit, where you have you know, five different characters in the movie, but they don't really have a enormous amount of dialogue, so the film has a legitimately quick pace throughout. It doesn't really have any moments where it stalls and breaks down. And the actors really had their own inherent personality and charisma, so they were able to make it work despite the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of character development for all of these characters. It just goes to show you don't always need gobs and gobs of character development to have a successful film or successful story. Sometimes all you need is just actors who have natural charisma and personality and the ability to bring that out into their performances. And, you know, I really felt that for the most part, the cast really did that. Bruce Campbell, Ellen Sandweiss, Richard DeManincor, Betsy Baker, Theresa Tilly. And everyone involved in the cast were such troopers, dealing with such just horrific circumstances with the shoot and, you know, all the different other problems, like with the makeup and all these other things that really went awry when it comes to the production of this film. I really highly recommend watching any kind of making of documentary about the making of Evil Dead, or reading the Evil Dead Companion, or checking out this book that's about Sam Raimi's films, which has a portion about it, a portion in it about the Evil Dead, because it is really a miracle that this film even got finished and got in the can. So because of everything that was going on with the production, and not only just with the production, but post-production, it's a miracle this film even got a distribution deal, that it ever got released in the first place, because it was so out there, it was so original and so unique for the time, and so unlike anything that people had seen before. It was having an incredibly hard time finding any studio or anyone that was willing to distribute it. And I think through a stroke of luck or fate or whatever you want to call it, they got some distribution. I think it kind of went through the drive-in market for a little bit. And it ultimately didn't really do that well on its initial release in theaters, because it wasn't really given a wide theatrical release. Even though, you know, it made 2.7 million, or it says 29.4 million, but I think that might have been after multiple different re-releases after the fact, because the initial release was not like a huge giant box office smash in 1981. Got critical acclaim, had people from the horror community, very established minds and offers from the community. I think Stephen King saw it and really liked it. So it had a lot of buzz about it, but it just didn't really get the best distribution. Partly because it's rated X or unrated, so it was kind of hard for it to really get a wide distribution deal to begin with. But ultimately, it found its audience, and I think for a lot of people, they discovered The Evil Dead on home video. They discovered it on a VHS, and I think at one point, I think it might have been one of the video nasties in the UK. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong on that, go ahead and correct me. But I would not be surprised if that's the case, considering, the UK went a little crazy during this time period about horror films dealing with graphic content. And despite the graphicness, the graphic nature of the film and the intensity, of scenes like the tree rape scene and all this other stuff, I think something that really stands out with this movie is its heart. The relationship and the romance between Ash and I'm trying to think, trying to make sure that it is Linda, between Ash and Linda, Betsy Baker's character. I feel is a very sweet, charming presentation of two characters really forming a bond and an infatuation with another. I liked the connection that Ash had with Linda, with the locket. With the I think it was a locket. It was definitely, it was some kind of jewelry that really enables him to eventually get away from the Evil Dead and actually use it to his advantage in the end to help him stop the terror. I thought it was a really nice connection. It was something that was given to him, or he was going to give to her, and he uses that to get the book and to ultimately stop the terror momentarily, because the film admittedly does have one of those twist endings where it doesn't really work, but hey, it's still, the thought was still there, and the thought definitely still counts. And the creativity, I love the creativity of this film, the ingenuity that's on display, especially in the finale, with light bulbs filling up with blood, and the projector screen and how they handled that, and that scene where Ash looks up at a pipe and just gets absolutely just drenched in blood. I believe that's in this one. It could actually be part of the second film, but I don't think it is. And other stuff, like he puts his hand through a mirror and it's not a normal mirror, like it's all like water, like he stuck his hand in the Stargate, stuff like that. Just really ingenious and creative and really quite wonderful. I love ingenuity like that when it comes to film, because film as a medium, as a storytelling medium, when it comes to visuals like that, it's second to none. It really is second to none when it comes to those things. And yeah, I mean, for the gore, you get some nice, bits of gore. Even though some of it's done claymation style, it still has an impact. It still works. It still has something that definitely sticks with you. And I remember when I first saw this, I think my dad had it on VHS, and I remember watching it with him late one night, and I remember just really disturbing me at a young age. So I can see why this film still has such a big following, and why it's still highly regarded as one of the best horror films, or one of the best films of this particular decade. I get it, because it really does have a power to it. It really, unlike any of the other films in the franchise, I mean, I really love Evil Dead 2, and I enjoy Armory of Darkness. And I like some parts of the Evil Dead remake, despite the fact that ultimately I'm not really a big fan of it. But this is the one that really has the most impact for me, in terms of really, chilling me to the bone and really just getting under my skin. And a big part of that is the score by Joe DeLuca. It's not a score that I would listen to over and over again. It's not a score that I would say is one of my all-time favorite scores, but it's a really great example of how to use a score to create some really unnerving mood and atmosphere. And I think that's why some of these sequences are so strong and so compelling when it comes to how intense they are and how disturbing they are, is because of the music. The music is so dissonant, it's so weird, it's so strange, and it really fits with a lot of these strange visuals. It's not a score that I'm going to sit down and listen to, over and over again, because it's not that kind of music, but for what it's supposed to do and what its intention is, it's an excellent score for this film. If you put it in anything else, it's really not going to work. But you can say that for a lot of different scores. I also felt the film was really well edited by Edna Ruth Paul. The cinematography by Tim Filo was quite exquisite, especially during the shots at night. I really liked the use of fog and just a lot of just really nice looking shots at night in terms of showcasing the very creepy and eerie mood and atmosphere that the film really effectively established for the majority of the running time. And it's only like 85 minutes, so it goes by at a really quick pace. It doesn't take very long at all for things to really get going, and once they get going, they just escalate. Things just escalate and get crazier and crazier and more intense. But it does have moments though where it pauses and it takes a break and takes a breather, which does really benefit the film, because it's not just constant intensity over and over and over again. Because after a while, you just get a little bit tired of being beat over the head with the same amount of intensity. But that's not really the case with The Evil Dead, so it knows when to have the balance that is sorely missing in so many horror films nowadays. It's just like intensity upon even more intensity, and after, the third or fourth time, it gets old, and it doesn't really have the same impact, and it loses a lot of its luster. And I still can't believe what they were able to do for $350 million to $400 million. I mean, compared to the budgets that even some of the smaller budgeted independent horror films have that get theatrical releases nowadays, it's astonishing what they were able to come up with and what they were able to do. And it's also, in a lot of ways, the product of a bygone era. Nowadays, they're going to do stuff in post, they're going to do CGI, you're not going to try to do everything as practically as possible, even if, you don't have that much money to work with. You see that a lot nowadays. A lot of people are just using a lot of CGI, a lot of Photoshop, a lot of Adobe After Effects, that kind of stuff. And I get it, because it's right at your fingertips. But there's something to be said about doing things for real, getting down and dirty and really getting your feet wet when it comes to directing and it comes to creating something. And I also wanted to give some shout outs to a lot of the other actors and actresses in the film. I mean, especially Ellen Sandweiss and Betsy Baker and Theresa Tilly. They were all really good. In particular, I felt like, because I believe it is... Yeah, Shelley is the first one that turns, if I remember correctly. And then you have Cheryl. No, actually, it's Cheryl. Cheryl's the one that succumbs, and Shelley's the one that's paranoid. I really and they both did really good. All of them did really good jobs when they are possessed by this entity, by just being so inhuman and with their movements and with their voices and with and I know a lot of the voice stuff was done in post, but I mean just the way that they were acting with the makeup, and some of it's very simple and very simplistic when it comes to the makeup design. Some of it's very complicated, but I mean for the time, really quite effective. The white eyes and stuff, really, just the fact that you can't see people's pupils is always really creepy to me, because a lot of the saying is the eyes are the window to the soul, and this film gets it when it comes to the inherent creepiness and disturbing factor of looking at somebody who looks human, but then there's something really off about them, and then you can't see the pupils of their eyes. It's all white. And yeah, Betsy Baker I thought was really great in this. The whole sequence when she, torments Ash and it's just messing with him, and the laugh that she had and all this stuff, just very, very creepy and really well done. And yeah, and I think yeah, that's the one that really stood out to me when it comes to the actress who was performing with all of the makeup and doing all of the deadite stuff. And I don't really know what else to say about the movie, except it is one of those films that it has a reputation, and it definitely does deserve it, and then some. And despite the fact that it's marketed in a way, some of the marketing for this film is really misleading. One of the posters is used for one of the Anchor Bay VHS releases and DVDs, shows Ash with a chainsaw. He doesn't really use a chainsaw in this movie, especially not in the same capacity as he does in the other films in the series. So that's just misleading. I see why they did that, but it's not really the character that Ash is in this film. And I have to be honest, I don't like the ending. After everything that Ash went through, there is no reason to have him succumb to the Evil Dead at the end because of sequel bait. There's no reason for it. It's just not necessary. I know they try to explain it in the second film, which in itself is kind of not really a true sequel anyway. It's a hybrid. It's a remake and a sequel. It's complicated. I'll talk about that more when I review the second film. But yeah, I don't really care for the ending. After everything that he went through, why do you have to go that route? It's not particularly shocking or surprising, because even at this time in this horror genre, you'd seen that a lot. And especially afterwards, like, I mean, countless films have done that when it comes to the ending. So I'm not really a fan of the ending. And I have to, and when it comes to the performances, Richard DeManincor is not really the best actor, but he's okay. But I feel that, I don't know, it just, he's kind of flat for me personally. And he plays this character who's kind of cool and whatever, but then he's kind of a dick, and I don't know, like, that character I'm very indifferent on. Like, I don't hate the character, and I don't think his performance is like the worst thing ever, but when it comes to the actors or the actresses and the cast, I would say it's definitely the weakest performance out of the five main cast members. But that's just me personally. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the movie. I don't really have any legitimate, like, really strong issues with it. I don't like the ending. I think, Richard DeManincor isn't really the best actor, and his performance isn't really the best in the world, and the way the character was written, I wasn't really that into it. But it's very minor. It's a very minor thing, and it doesn't really affect my overall enjoyment of the movie or my overall feel on it. It's a very minor thing. And at the end of the day, because there's so many things about this movie that are so excellent and are so well done. So anyway, I don't really know what else to say except thanks for watching my review of The Evil Dead. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.